After the marriage fell through, I knew that I could happily bat for either side. I knew from my own experience it was something that I'd not considered in my 20s. I knew that I could just as easily have a relationship with a guy as with a girl. To me, it was the person who mattered most. It was the personality which was important. I did have one or two gay friends. It was a frequent accusation that I was having a physical relationship, especially with a chap called Nick, who was very supportive, 8 or 9 years younger than me at the time, and wrote me a letter and a card. But Nick had a boyfriend of his own, and he was just a friend of mine without any personal physical relationship being involved, something which the now ex-wife could not or would not accept or understand. After a year or so, I met Martin. Martin was like a light almost that came into my life, and we fell for each other, and he was great. As far as a weekend contact was concerned, the children and I would be enjoying the time together by ourselves, almost always on the Saturday. I didn't introduce them until after the first few months, probably, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 months, until I was sure that it was quite a firm relationship. And they got on like a house on fire, to such an extent that no sooner would I have picked the children up than Laura, particularly at the time, would be asking, Dad, is it all right if we phone Martin? And they'd phone him on my mobile phone to check that he could come for tea. And that evening he would come round for an hour or two, perhaps 3. And they'd, for example, know that he'd be turning up at 5:30, say. So just before 5:30 would come, and they'd be looking out and they'd be tugging at the curtains, and you would literally see them jump up and down with glee the instant his car came. It's Martin, it's Martin. And it was a very strong relationship they had. It was nice to watch, and I considered myself blessed with it. After the contact was withdrawn in May 2001, the next time I saw the children was 6 months later, the middle of November 2001, and the day after the major hearing in front of the circuit judge, who had no hesitation in attaching a penal notice and also stopped her in the witness box when she was caught out lying more than once, and told her that if I didn't see the children that weekend, that she could bring a bag packed for two weeks in prison. So I did see the children the next day, and it was as though Laura had undergone an emotional shock. That's the only way to describe it. It was as though she'd undergone some sort of severe trauma. Something had died inside her, something I couldn't quite put my finger on. I said, "What's your favourite programme on TV now, Laura?" "I don't like to watch TV now. I just like to play outside by myself." I thought, yeah, well, I'm not surprised with having to live with her, if that's how she treats you. Emma, by contrast, was still very, very bouncy. It was as though she hadn't been influenced at all at that point, or pressurised by her elder sister, and she took great pride in interacting, and we had a really nice time, even though it was only the best part of an hour in Mrs. Wilkinson's front porch. Finances were the only thing in this case which was settled really quite quickly, because obviously that was me. We settled those in a matter of months. The contact case continued for 5 or 6 years and is still, for all intents and purposes, continuing. It's now a total of 5.5 years. There's been a total of 29 contact orders. I've never seen the court enforce a single one, and it's generally acknowledged that contact orders in this country aren't really worth the paper that they're actually written on. The simplest way to think of it is that it's rather like the father trying to play football on a pitch that's actually on a 45-degree uphill slope. It's constantly against you all the time. It drains you emotionally, it's mentally exhausting, you're almost on tenterhooks all the time. It costs an absolute fortune, cash which would be so much more appropriately spent on Laura and Emma. The shock, pain and anger stages, they all kick in at various points, and it certainly is a very intense feeling for the next few months. Eventually it began to lift, and you're left with the scars of what had happened, but also it gives you a resulting inner strength. I remember fighting the contact battle at its peak. After 6 months of contact being withdrawn and all the CAF-CAS reports, it got into court. And we were having lunch, and my barrister told me, she said, "Mark, soon the day will come when you don't have to think about those children every day of your life." Well, if it has come, it's only very occasional times that I don't think about them. I think most days I'm conscious of thinking about them, and almost always more than once a day. Especially when I see children of the same age. Like for example, I know Emma is sort of 6 now, but she'll always be the little 4 to 5 year old that was taken away from me. I don't have any criticisms of her ability as a mum whatsoever, with one single but large exception, and that is the emotional abuse that she inflicts on those children by denying them contact with me as their dad, for no good reason. I've not seen either child properly, Laura or Emma, since literally a few minutes in a child psychologist's office on February the 14th, which was Valentine's Day 2003. It's time to consider things, and I've decided to go and teach scuba full time. I'm going to become a scuba instructor. It's something I've worked in before, and I've worked in it before for 6 months. Been looking at a couple of offers, almost as if by coincidence. It's all the places that begin with C. I was looking at something in Kefalonia, there was a dive school in Corsica, there's Crete, and then there's Cyprus as well. So there's plenty of work there, and it's altogether more warmer than we are now. I have to build a new life somewhere else, in the hope that the children can come and participate in it when they're older. But I'll still maintain contact through every means available to me. I'll stay in touch. I shall continue asking for reasonable contact, and if it's refused, I'll ask again a few months later in the hope that she's changed her mind and hopefully seen sense. So that's how I see the future. If not, then the children will be able to make their own decision one day and will be strong enough to make and carry out that decision, not have to constantly encounter the control of that and the aftermath that they're faced with after returning. It's absolutely dreadful, it's horrific. We used to have loads of happy times, and I just feel that my relationship with my children has just been completely trashed by a vindictive and spiteful ex-wife.